Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go. So make the best of this test and don't ask why. It's not a question but a lesson learned in time. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.
Good morning, everybody. This is Dr. Harry Schick at WCTC, Somerset, New Jersey. We are from High Point Health Center right down the road in Highland Park. If you ever want to reach us there, as many of you already have, just give us a call, 732-249-9800. That's at High Point Health. I want to say good morning to you and say good morning to last week. I was here alone with Ann, who helped me through. This week we have our full staff back. Good morning, honey.
Good morning. How are you?
Good to see you, honey. Sturzer from the office at High Point Health with me, and Sharon, our media expert consultant promoter, is here, which is always heartening. It makes me feel more comfortable. What Sharon doesn't know is I want to put in a little plug for her that she is going to be starring next week in the fantastic Broadway show Company, having a lead role. If you're interested in tickets, and I highly recommend that you go, she'll be at the Henderson Theater in Lincroft. I know you will have a great time. She's got a fantastic voice, and although she's behind the scenes here, she's even better in front of the scenes. So please check her out and go have a good night and enjoy yourself.
Front and center for
Front
Sharon.
and center, exactly. We're very proud and happy for her. Speaking of having a good time out, I did something last night which was unusual, which I always wanted to do. You know, I work hard, work long, as many of you do. So for me, going to movies is a great escape. You go out for 2 hours and it's like being transported to another world. So I was looking last night for a movie to see, and as you know, there's like 15 movie theaters around here, and they all play the same movies, 99% of which I really don't have any interest in. So occasionally go to some different theaters, but last night I noticed that in Princeton, at the Princeton Cinema, down on Route 27, they were playing on the big screen an old movie, which I don't think I ever saw, and I always wanted to see, On the Waterfront. So I went down to see that Marlon Brando and Eva Marie Saint classic, and it was really fantastic. I recommend you go down there to see some of those old movies when they're on the big screen. It's really incredible. But I recommend you get there early. I've been to that movie theater many times, never had a problem getting a seat. Got there like a minute before the show, and the place was packed. Had to struggle to find a place to sit. So if you like old movies, it's a great venue to go to. And like I said, whatever you like to do to take a break from life is a good thing in a healthy way. So that's one of the things I like to do. So in the office, I like to start off the show many times with questions that come up. And this week we have a couple new people starting in our neurofeedback practice, which we work with focusing, anxiety, things of that nature. So some of the questions came up. Before we start the neurofeedback therapy, we do a brain map, and two of the people said, "Oh, do I really need to have the brain map? Can't I just get started?" So I wanted to talk to Honey about that, about why it's essential to get the brain map before we get started.
Well, everybody's brain is different, and how would we know what your brain needs if we don't actually look and see how it's functioning?
Can you describe how the brain map works again? I know we've done it before, but it bears repeating.
Sure. So in the same way that when someone wants to check how your heart's doing, they take a stethoscope, put it in their ears, and listen to your chest. For the brain, we put a cap on, and embedded in the cap are teeny tiny little stethoscope-like structures that actually pick up how your brain is firing. It can elicit and detect the electrical patterns of your brain. And then that gets transferred through an amplifier to the computer. And then all that data gets, that raw data, just squiggles of electrical activity, gets sent to a database where it's analyzed and compared to thousands of maps that had been imported that are known to be within the normal range.
So they compare how the person's brain is functioning to a normal.
Right.
database.
Right. The same way that we know how a heart should beat and what the rhythm should look like because it's been studied. And so if you do an EKG, you'll see on a graph if your heart is beating in a way that's considered in the normal range.
Right.
So too with your brain. And if you have pain in your abdomen, you go into a doctor and then they send you for tests, an MRI, a CAT scan, or they look inside with a scope because they want to identify why you're having this pain. They're not going to just start guessing. And I think with the
Hopefully.
brain, it's so amazing to me that we struggle with so many things that are related only to our brains and originate from our brains. And psychiatrists don't look at the brain. General doctors don't look at the brain. Psychotherapists don't look. No one is actually looking at the main structure, the brain, that's creating your problem. So in order to have a intervention that's very specific for your issue, we need to look at your brain.
I know that with psychotherapy, for example, talk therapy, which is good, is designed though to help your brain waves change. And medication, the same thing. It's designed to help your brain waves change, but nobody really is looking to see where they are to begin with.
Right. With psychotherapy, and I'm a psychotherapist, and I love what I do, and people really feel so much better engaging in psychotherapy. However, it could be a very long-term process because talk therapy doesn't help the brain change the way it fires as quickly as, let's say, doing psychotherapy along with neurotherapy, meaning training your brain to fire in a healthier way and talking about the issues. That combination is so potent and so amazing, and the outcomes are really miraculous, honestly. So I
So
recommend,
working with how the brain fires with neurofeedback in combination with doing a talk therapy.
absolutely is the best combination. And of course, working with you, Dr. Schick, and that's why it's amazing that we have these different practices under the same roof, because issues in terms of life stressors affect how your brain fires and changes a healthy firing brain to something that's unhealthy. Metabolic issues, if somebody has an underlying physiological issue, will absolutely change the way the brain fires. I can see a map and see that somebody has a food sensitivity, and then what do you do with that?
That always amazes me when you do a brain map and you come to me and you say, do they have a thyroid problem? Do they have a food sensitivity? And you can actually see it in the brain waves, and you come to me, and almost invariably I find the same thing on the blood work.
Right. So then this way it's a multi-pronged approach addressing your symptoms from so many different angles rather than just one, because one alone won't help you completely fix your problem. So this way, when we work together in the office, we can really help get you to where you want to be, which is pain-free, symptom-free, and being able to live a happy and joyful life.
And I always tell people when we do this, they want to know how long it's going to take and so forth. But I tell them we're not fixing a sprained ankle. This is the brain. There's nothing more complicated than working with the brain and getting results, but there's nothing more satisfying. Right. Because once the brain, I know you talked to me before about how when it gets fixed, why it stays that way, like riding a bicycle, right?
Right. So that's also what I get that question a lot. What's the underlying principle, and do I have to come into your office for the rest of my life? And the answer is no. Once the brain learns about itself and understands how it's firing in a way that's drifting from the norm, it catches on. In the same way, I don't know, hopefully most of you know how to ride a bike, so you could understand this paradigm, but it's called operant conditioning. When you sit in that bike seat when you're this little kid trying to learn to balance, it takes a while for the brain to catch on like how in space you need to be to stay on that seat. So you start off with training wheels, somebody holds the handlebar for you, and then you eventually catch on. So let's say you don't ride a bike for 5 years, you don't go back to training wheels. So that paradigm applies to the way neurofeedback works, which is teaching the brain about itself, and then the brain holds on to it. It's called consolidation, and it could keep that information permanently stored.
I know one of the other questions we get also with the neurofeedback is people like certain parts of themselves, like their personality. and afraid, am I going to change who I am? Am I going to be a different kind of a person?
Right. So, I hear that as well. So let me ask you a question. Let's say you wake up one day and you hear some stressful news. And so you're super anxious. You might start feeling depressed. You don't know what the outcome is going to be. And then the next day you find out, wow, the surgery went well. My mom's going to be fine. Life is beautiful again. So you feel good. So the day that you didn't feel good, you were one person, and the day now that you feel good, you're another person. No, it's the same thing with neurofeedback. If you come in and you're feeling anxious, we can help train the brain to fire differently, so you're no longer feeling anxious, but you're the same exact person. Your core personality
somebody
is
a
the
joker,
same.
they like the way they are in public, or they enjoy themselves. They're not going to lose that. In fact, they'll probably become even better at what they're good at, right? When you say?
Well, absolutely, because one of the groups of people that we work with are peak performers. Athletes come through our office, pilots, anyone that wants to really ratchet up their game and function in a way that they're not inhibited by so much anxiety and self-doubt and second guessing. Neurofeedback helps you to stop having that like that background noise in your head, second guessing you. It doesn't change who you are. You're just doing it better.
That anxiety is the worst. I think that as we work with people over the years, almost behind every single person's problem, no matter what it is, there's underlying anxiety.
Yeah. So, when people train with peak performers out in the field and they hook them up to transportable neurofeedback equipment, they can actually track the second that internal voice of, will I be able to, like, when I go for that ball, am I gonna make it? Am I gonna score? And help reduce that kind of second guessing. And we can do that in the office as well. And so, yes, if you want to work on an issue that you have that's very overt and that you're struggling with, or you just want to function at your optimum, neurofeedback is a phenomenal intervention. And it's what's so amazing is that there's no medication involved, and we don't force the brain to do anything it doesn't want to do. It's a simple invitation.
Right. They're doing it themselves.
Right. Here, brain, look, this is what you're doing. What would you like to do with that? And then the brain goes, oh, let me see about that.
I know. I talked to somebody the other day, about their anxiety, and they were afraid we were going to do something to the brain. And I told them, I said, no, your brain is trying to fix itself. It just can't do it. We're just going to give it the opportunity to do what it's been trying to do for years.
Yeah, that's a good way to frame it. Thank you. What's so interesting about the brain is that it's an organ of novelty and pattern making. That's how we learn what makes sense in our world. We're born with very little information, and then we start to layer in information. And then what the brain does, every time you're exposed to something new, it compares that new piece of information to what it already knows, and then it adjusts accordingly and makes sense of the world once again. And that happens over and over through the course of our lifetime. What the brain doesn't do is look at itself. So if it gets stuck, let's say, with firing really very slow waves because somebody had a head injury or they had some trauma in their childhood, and naturally the brain just slows down because it becomes more inflamed. Once it starts to fire slowly, it doesn't start to say to itself, well, today, I don't really need to do that anymore, so let me just speed up again. It just keeps looking outward to the world to see how to continue to make sense of new information and to make a pattern from that. So it gets very stuck. And so when you come to me, you could have had something that happened to you 30 years ago, and I'll see that stuck brain still. But when you start doing neurofeedback, the information is fed back to the brain about its stuckness, and that goes, oh, let me make a change here. Let's tweak that and get some of that delta down. And all of a sudden you can focus better. You're less impulsive.
Okay. I need to.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're doing great. I just realized the time. We need to take a little bit of a break. We're going to finish up in a few minutes and talk more about your brain. So keep your brain tuned in. This is Dr. Harry Schick with Honey Sturzer. We're from High Point Health Center, your natural health consultants on WCTC. Come back with us in just a moment or two.
This heavyweight bout is about to begin. The challenger wears white trunks with a blue stripe, and the champ is wearing, looks like an examination gown from the doctor's office. And from the back, we can... Ooh, that's not pretty. Champ, what's with the crazy gap?
I've got to take care of my family.
Yeah, so?
Look, when you love your family, you got to go in and get those important medical screenings. A lot of potentially deadly diseases can be treated if you catch them in time.
So you wear the examination gown because...
Because I'm a real man. Real men take care of their families and get those tests. Real men wear gowns.
Okay, champ, good luck. Here we go. The champ's not wasting any time. Oh, it's over. This fight is over. Champ, you barely broke a sweat. Any words for your fans out there?
Remember, go to ahrq.gov for a list of the tests they need to get and when to get them.
What was that web address again?
ahrq.gov. And remember, real men wear gowns.
Go to ahrq.gov. This message brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, AHRQ, and the Ad Council.
Live on Sunday night, it's Bill Cunningham.
Bill Cunningham here, the Great American. Every Sunday night live, a small band of renegades form around radio from Maine to Hawaii, from Alaska to Florida, and all places in between to talk about the issues of the day. This Sunday night live, we talk about what was and what lies ahead. Bill Cunningham, the Great American. I am a Great American, live with you every Sunday night.
Willie.
Sunday night at 10 on the new Talk Radio 1450 WCTC and WCTCAM.com.
It's something unpredictable, but in the end that's right. I hope you had the time of your life.
Hi, welcome back. Dr. Harry Schick, natural health consultant with Honey Sturzer. So, Honey, you just gave us an incredible amount of great information about neurofeedback in the brain. So the question is, who exactly are you? Like, what is your training? How do you know this stuff? I mean, what?
So I started off earlier on in my career as a registered nurse, and then I got very interested in the idea of psychotherapy, and I went back for my master's, and I became a licensed clinical social worker. And then I was thinking really about what I do in terms of talking with patients and trying to help them move them to where they need to be. And there were patients that would come in with focus issues and anxiety issues and feeling depressed and other kinds of presentations that talk therapy wasn't getting them where they needed to go, probably quickly enough or making enough of a dent. And I said, well, there has to be more to offer to people who are struggling. You know, we don't have our whole lives to just sit and talk in the office about the problem without it getting some kind of resolution. So I heard about this idea of biofeedback and then the subcontext of specifically neurofeedback. And I was very intrigued. And I discovered that you kind of have to get an electrical engineering degree because it's such a complicated topic, and it's dealing with all kinds of underlying electrical kinds of dynamics in terms of the amplifiers and all the other
Right, applying it
filters
to how the brain works. Right.
And also how do you use the equipment to intersect with the brain. I mean, the whole idea of the brain getting analyzed by a computer program is kind of mind-boggling if you think about it. And so there's no course that they teach in a university. What you have to do is find someone who's spent the last 30 or 40 years doing neurofeedback, and they are certified to train you, and you mentor with them. And I did that, and there's a certifying body called the BCIA, and after 3 or 4 years of training, I became board certified in neurofeedback. And so I'm constantly studying and learning.
I can attest to that. She's constantly studying.
And
I try to talk to her. She's busy doing something.
Constantly doing webinars weekly, 3 times a week, actually, because the information is vast. The brain is unlimited in terms of what we need to learn about it. And what we know is
new stuff coming out all the time.
Yeah. Right. The body of knowledge that we have about the brain is actually very small compared to what there is to know about the brain. But
someone asked they on the Facebook, they came with a question wanting to know if this works with babies. Like, how would you what would you say about that?
Well, that's really interesting, because originally neurofeedback, the way it came about to be used with humans was that the studies were done on cats.
Oh.
And so cats have when you say it's a placebo, some people say, well, this could be a placebo. Well, it's only a placebo if you believe that it's going to help you. The cat had no idea what was happening. And what Barry Sturman did, who was one of the original researchers in neurofeedback, is that he trained cats to increase a certain brainwave by feeding it like a little milk kind of nutrient as a reward every time it increased the specific sensory motor rhythm brainwave. And that brainwave he discovered was protective and saved cats that were then used in experiments to see why the fuel from rockets were causing seizure activity in humans. And he then exposed these like 50 cats to the same fuel, and 40 of them developed seizures and died, and 10
Probably
didn't.
something that would not be allowed to be done now. This
Right.
was probably a long time
Oh
ago.
yeah, 40 years ago.
Reminds me of prisoner studies that I
Research,
saw.
right.
It just doesn't.
So
Thankfully, that kind of stuff doesn't go on anymore.
right, but the 10 cats that didn't die, he went back to his notes and he realized, oh, these were the cats that I trained using neurofeedback and increased
Huh.
that sensory motor
Interesting.
rhythm. And guess what? Who was the very next group that neurofeedback was used on were humans who had seizure disorders. That at the time there was very little to offer to them. They couldn't drive, they couldn't function, and he started to use neurofeedback, which is non-invasive, totally innocuous, and discovered that his human patients, were also not developing seizures. And then from there, it grew the next group of people that.
So what about with the babies?
So babies' brains are so underdeveloped that it's questionable whether you would want to actually try to train their brain when they're in a state of usually complete delta. When we're talking about slow waves, the human beings, when we're born, we start off in a very, very slow wave activity state. And then as we layer in cognitive abilities, the brain waves that come online are faster ones. So I'm not sure that I would recommend using neurofeedback for very, very young children.
Probably it's more of an inflammation issue with if there's that kind of problem with a young child, as opposed to neurofeedback, or some kind of metabolic or like we call nutritional issue that's maybe creating inflammation that would be causing that kind of problem in a baby. Although I would be interested to hearing more from the person who wrote in the question, see what we could do about it. The thing I like to say about neurofeedback is that it always works. And when it doesn't work, so that sounds paradoxical, it always works. And when it doesn't, it's because usually one of two things. Either there's tremendous stress at home, so much that the person keeps getting re-stimulated by what happens at home. And I know you work with many people and as a psychotherapist to help reduce that.
Right. Well, I would expand it not just to say at home. People have stress at work, and any stressors
Right.
globally that are
Good point.
unaddressed, or kids at school who are being bullied, or teachers who are inappropriate with the child.
Yeah, we've
seen that
Yeah.
on more than one occasion, unfortunately, and
Yeah.
practitioners throughout the country talk about it all the time. Is we're doing our job and kids who are not turning around and then we find out that there's an underlying emotional stressor coming either from home, school, or from some other source.
And the other thing besides that, of course, would be inflammation, which is something that we look at. If the brain is inflamed, I talk to people think of the brain as having wires. And if you have fire on the wires, it's very hard to retrain it. So, people are eating a lot of excitotoxins like aspartame and things
Gluten,
like that.
dairy,
if
for
they
those
if they
people.
have a problem with
Right,
those things, right?
Right.
So you can't be training your brain and then going home and re-inflaming it and
Right.
expect to get results.
Right.
So
And
that's
then
why
there's
we
one
look
other
at these things. Yeah, go
right.
ahead.
There's one other important piece that we talk about, which is the genetics. I mean, when you look at kids on the spectrum in terms of autism, and you look at their genetic coding, you often find that there's genetic variants that they need to be supported nutritionally to accommodate for those issues and to address their depleted systems. And
I know we had somebody recently who the body. One of the reasons studying the genetics is that the body is supposed to take food that you eat and make certain components out of it. For example, one of the components is glycine. And we had a person recently who showed that the body was very inefficient in making it. And we don't have enough of that. It creates all kinds of anxiety and other problems. So the answer is have the person start taking this nutrient. And we see big changes when we do things like that.
Right. And you've mentioned many other nutrients throughout the course of our having these shows. There are so many. And that's why it's always good to do the genetic testing to zero in on which ones you might need. But yes, it wouldn't be enough just to do neurofeedback if you have some other underlying issue. And that's why, Dr. Schick, I think it's amazing that we have the opportunity to collaborate and to be able to address a person's system from every angle.
Right. But on the same token, in the reverse, it's not enough usually just to give the person the nutrients they need.
Right.
You actually have to retrain the brain.
Right.
So
Right.
it's like if the
That's correct.
house is burning down, you put out the fire, but you got to, unfortunately, you still got to rebuild the kitchen or
Right.
whatever got burned. That's what neurofeedback does, really, in terms of rebuilding the system. So, we look at making sure the brain has the right amount of oxygen, making sure the brain has a good sugar balance, make sure that it's not too inflamed by things people are eating that they shouldn't be eating. And then, when the stress and trauma of life is somewhat under control and the inflammation is down, that's when neurofeedback, it always works, but it really works great that way, and you really see incredible things.
Yeah, I always compare, when you say it always works unless it doesn't, I always think about when people go to the gym to work out. You lift weights and you keep increasing the weights till you lift heavier and heavier weights. You're going to build muscle mass. That's just the way the body works.
Right.
So if someone goes in there and doesn't eat any protein at all and is starving themselves, they can try to lift those weights, but they won't build the muscle mass because they're missing the building blocks to support the muscle to grow larger. So as soon as you'll start eating nutritionally better, your muscles will start to respond, and the brain is the same way.
We have to really appreciate the fact that working with the brain, you have to do a global, comprehensive approach, which is one of the things that we really pride ourselves in at High Point Health.
Mm-hmm.
So let us know direct questions, or come in and just give us a call. Again, the number there is 249-9800. I want to thank Honey Sturzer for joining us the first half of the show today. Always educational and fun having you here. I'll be back with you in a few moments for the third segment. We've found something very interesting to talk to you about. So hang on, and be back with you in a moment.
Wishing everybody a great day.
If you're not facing your mortgage issues, this can be the most terrifying sound in the world. It means you've fallen behind. It means hope is dwindling. It means you're another call closer to losing your home to foreclosure. Fortunately, there's hope. If you need real help and guidance, call 1-888-995-HOPE. That's 1-888-995-4673. Because nothing is worse than doing nothing.
Brought to you by NHS of New York City, Brand New Day, RUPCO, MHA of Southwestern Connecticut, NeighborWorks, and the Ad Council.
Join me, Gary Sullivan, on At Home with Gary Sullivan this weekend. We'll answer your questions about painting, insulation, ventilation, mold, or how to refinish the laminate countertop. I'll help you protect your biggest investment, your home. I'll take your calls about your house and interview home improvement experts every weekend. So join us and learn how to do it, what to use, and where to get the products you need to be successful. Looking forward to your calls.
Sunday morning at 10 on the new Talk Radio 1450 WCTC.
It's something unpredictable, but in the end that's right. I hope you have the time of your life.
All right, welcome back for segment number 3. I got so much to talk about. I'm already behind time, so let's get right to it. Imagine a pill that would lower your blood sugar, decrease insulin resistance. So remember, when you eat food and sugar gets into your blood, that sugar then has to get out of your blood and go into the cell for energy. And the way that it does that is that it gets escorted from the blood to the cell with insulin. So that's insulin's job. What happens sometimes is that the cell, we've talked about this in the past, the cell does not want to accept, doesn't want to accept the sugar, so it builds like a wall. That's called insulin resistance, and that's a major cause of type 2 diabetes. So imagine a drug that can lower your blood sugar in the first place. Decrease insulin resistance means it's easier for the sugar to get into the cell. A drug that would also unbelievably lower blood pressure and would help you with weight loss, and also help you with energy during the day. So if we could patent that drug, you and I, then we'd have a good time with all the billions that we would make. Well, it's not a drug. It's something we've talked about over and over and over and over and over again, intermittent fasting. So for those of you who did it and dropped it out or doing it, keep it up. But just want you to remember something we talked about in past shows. You can always go back to the podcast and listen to them. But actually, we now call it intermittent eating because it's much more positive that way. But there's a period of time each day where you don't eat, usually from the night before to into the morning, whether it's 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours, whatever. So I want you to remember about that, and I want you to do it. And I saw an interesting thing. Somebody said, you mean you skip breakfast? No, you do not skip breakfast. You just have breakfast later in the day. Okay, break fast. You break your fast later in the day. So for those of you who've gotten slacked off and started eating early in the morning, I wanted you to remember all the benefits of intermittent fasting and to get back to it or stick with it. Now, I saw something in the paper this morning right before I came in, and it's a book review, which is very relevant for us. It's called Fraud in the Lab. Fraud in the Lab. And I won't butcher the person's name by mentioning who wrote it. I think it's a French name, and it's been a long time since I studied French, like a few lifetimes ago. But what they found out, and they did a chart, and some of you probably have heard of this or thought about this, and you have to think about the fact that people are spending lots of money for studies done, and that there's a lot of influence financially to have the studies come out the way they want. I remember reading years ago, even the original study that genetics is based on. What was that guy's name? Mendel? I don't remember. No. Anyway, that whole thing about recessive dominant, even that research was fudged. But this person found, when he was talking about people not telling the truth in their research studies, there was a 2009 review of 21 surveys. A third of the respondents admitted to having committed questionable research practices. This is astonishing. You are making your decision, your doctors are making their decisions based on these studies, and a third of them fudge the data to make it come out. And we have to be honest, usually in favor of a drug saying that it can do something that it can't do. And in that, I think it was that same year, they found that 2% of the scientists admitted that they had fabricated or falsified results at least once. 14% said they knew colleagues who had done so. So this is just what people are admitting to. So you can just imagine. So when somebody says, "Well, studies show," okay, but unfortunately, you have to be reasonable also. One other one I want to tell you, that at the University of Virginia in 2011, they got 270 colleagues to repeat 100 published, this was psychological studies. Less than 40% of the studies could replicate the data of what they had found. So it's very sad. We like to think we read a study or we hear a study, or there's a study on the internet and you say, well, the study showed that. Well, unfortunately, we need to use our common sense also. So in light of that, I was looking at something new that I wanted to talk to you about that we hadn't spoken about before, acetaminophen. So acetaminophen are a classification of drugs that many of you take daily. The most popular one was made right here by us at Johnson & Johnson, called Tylenol. But acetaminophen they've always been questionable, and people remember the old days. If you remember the Tylenol scare, where it wasn't where they tainted Tylenol, but this has nothing to do with that. This has to do with the actual acetaminophen itself. And I get many people telling me, what should I take? I'm having a problem. Should I take this kind of drug, an aspirin or whatever? And I usually guide them away from acetaminophen. And after doing a little more research on it, I'm very glad that I did. Now, obviously, I'm not big into drugs in any case, but sometimes, if you take them for a day or two, it's one thing. It's None of these are designed to be taken regularly. First of all, how does acetaminophen work to manage mild to moderate pain and fever? Okay, so first we have to understand the mechanism, how it works. So I did some research to find out how it works, and the answer is nobody has any idea. What? How many things would you take like that, knowing that nobody knows how this thing works? So I want you to understand that nobody knows how that drug, which is taken daily by who knows how many people overtaking the drug, taking too much of it, using it commonly, nobody has a clue how it works. That would make me a little bit concerned. Another thing I found interesting when I was looking at acetaminophen was the most common side effect. The most common side effect of it is headaches. Hey, wait a minute. That's what people take it for. Now, when people talk about the other side of it, what the worst thing that it can do, and this is only if, the studies show that if you take too much of it, a lot of it, ultimately it can lead to liver damage. Okay, this everybody agrees on. This is in the literature. So they say be careful not to take too much. So I want to ask you a question, just to think about it logically. If they're saying if you take, I'm not giving you the number. I don't know the numbers offhand. I don't even know if they know. But let's say if a person accumulates 10 grams of acetaminophen in a certain amount of time, it's going to create liver damage. Do you think that 9.9% of it will create nothing? You mean like it's like there's no problem with it all the way, and then you take one drop too much and you got liver damage? No, when you think that along the way there's some problem with it, and that the end result is the liver damage, yeah, I would think so also. So I looked a little bit further to find out more about it and to see exactly why. Well, actually, let me just tell you a little bit more about it before I get to the big punchline of what the real problem is. So in a study by, again, now we have to take studies with a grain of salt, Himalayan salt or sea salt preferably. A study by, but you can't, I believe that you can trust when they say something bad about the drugs, because nobody's promoting that. They're kind of going against the grain. So a study from the Journal of the American Medical Association noted that children whose mothers used acetaminophen during pregnancy were at higher risk for their children having a diagnosis of hyperkinetic disorder and having ADHD-like behaviors at 7 years of age. So, there's a lot of controversy why all the ADHD. So it's clearly done in a JAMA study that taking acetaminophen during pregnancy will make your child more prone. Now, hang on, because we have to get to why that would be. Further, it says young children are particularly vulnerable to injury from drugs and toxins because their blood-brain barrier is not fully developed. Okay, so what does that mean? So you have what's called the blood-brain barrier. There's a chemical wall so that everything you eat can't get right to your brain, right? That would be terrible. Bologna sandwiches on your brain, things of that nature. So there's a chemical barrier around your brain that protects your brain so that not everything can get through. But that barrier is not there. That gets developed over time. So research data suggests from another American AMA study that acetaminophen is a hormone disruptor. Wow. And abnormal hormone exposures in pregnancy may influence fetal brain development, the brain development of the newborn. Another study done by Restorative Medicine found strong correlation between escalating diagnoses of asthma, ADHD, and autism with the use of acetaminophen in pregnant women. Okay, so this is getting serious, right? And sad that nobody's talking about it, except we're talking about it. All right, so what is the problem with acetaminophen? And I'm going to explain to you one thing which will kind of tie the whole thing together. You have a chemical inside of your cell. Now, your body is always working to detoxify itself. I have a lot of people saying, how do I detoxify myself? And we do that, but you have to understand that your body is already designed to detoxify itself. Your body is like a self-cleaning oven. If you would just leave it alone and let it do its job, you put a self-cleaning oven on, you keep opening it up and throwing junk in there, it's going to have a hard time cleaning itself. So the body is designed beautifully to clean itself out. A main way, and there's two kinds of ways of cleaning itself out. There's outside the cell and inside the cell. The main chemical inside the cell to clean itself is called glutathione. So glutathione is the main cellular detoxifier. Very, very important, glutathione. It's so important that your body makes it. Okay, unfortunately, you can't really take pills for glutathione. Your body makes it itself. In a moment, we're going to take a break. I got so much to do. Okay, in a moment, we're going to take a break. But I want to tell you a study that I saw in the Journal of Biochemical Cell Biology, when they were trying to figure out why people who took acetaminophen were more likely to develop asthma morbidity. In other words, people who took these drugs were more likely to die from asthma than others. But there'll be cheerier news also. Hang on for a minute. I'll be right back.
Sleepless nights, plenty of sleepless nights. Waking up in the middle of the night, can't go back to sleep.
Like when I first came back, it was kind of weird because like when I would be driving and a traffic light would go out or a light in the road would go out, that would kind of make me nervous. Because I'm thinking that at any second now something's going to explode.
I mean, death, destruction. I mean, that's something that stays with you, and it surfaces.
Normal reactions to an abnormal experience. Military life and combat trauma can have a lasting effect on your mental health. If you or a family member are having trouble coping, remember you're not alone. It takes courage to ask for help. An anonymous self-assessment is available online and by phone. Take the first step to healing. Visit militarymentalhealth.org or call 877-877-3647.
Don't let a little static come between you and the WCTC talk you love. Listen live to WCTC on your mobile or any Alexa-enabled device. Or log on to WCTCAM.com and listen for free right on your computer. Just because you're not in Middlesex, Somerset, or Union counties doesn't mean you can't hear WCTC. Connect with WCTC from anywhere for the best in local and national talk. Rutgers football and basketball, Somerset Patriots baseball, and your favorite WCTC shows.
It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.
Okay, I'm happy to be back and a little sad. At the same time, this is the last show for this month. I'm happy to be away for the next 2 weeks, but I'm just doing the show. We'll be doing reruns of the show. So, there's so much information. I think you can always get more out of it by hearing it again. But at the same time, I'm glad to get away and get a little break. Not from the show. The show's one of my favorite parts of the week. Anyway, to finish up, talking about glutathione, the great cell detoxifier. So glutathione, when it is low, has been implicated in psoriasis, big time in Parkinson's, autoimmune diseases. And glutathione also transports mercury out of the brain. Listen to that again. Transports mercury out of the brain. So if for some reason you're taking something which would put mercury in your brain, and there's some inoculations that people get that put mercury into the body and gets to the brain in young children, and glutathione is the thing to take it out, you would certainly, at the very least, not want to be taking acetaminophen at the same time you're getting these injections, because it would decrease your body's ability to get mercury out of the brain. So what we want to do is and when glutathione gets depleted, the place that it affects is the liver. And that's one of the reasons why liver disease, liver disease is the problem and the ultimate ending for many people when they take the acetaminophen. And that's also why they found that children and adults who took a lot of it, who took an excessive amount, and I don't really know what excessive amount is, could be just a regular amount, died from asthma, because without that glutathione to clear out the cells, the end is not good. So we want to increase glutathione. One way to do that is by not taking things that are going to decrease it. You cannot just take a glutathione. You cannot just take a glutathione pill. Glutathione is made up of different amino acids. When you take glutathione, your body breaks it up. You have to take, your body has to make the glutathione itself. Now, there's certain things that we know that will help your body make more glutathione. Sometimes we give people the precursors of it. There's something called superoxide dismutase, SOD, which has been known to increase glutathione in the body. And I find many, many people doing the genetic testing who have a decreased ability for the body to make SOD. So another reason for doing the genetic testing. But one of the things that I just want to mention is that just to be wary of the acetaminophen, because I know they sometimes make people feel better, but they come at a great cost. And we don't want to do anything to lower our glutathione if we can help it. Okay, so intermittent fasting, you're going to continue doing that while I'm away the next couple of weeks. You're going to do your intermittent exercise. Remember doing that? We talked about that, just doing it a couple of minutes a day and so forth. And we're going to also work on avoiding things like excitotoxins, things we shouldn't be eating. Now, what else are we going to do in the next couple of weeks? So I mentioned last week about not doing goals for the day, but doing goals for the week. And I actually had 2 people tell me that it was much easier for them to once a week write down their goals for the week and not have to do it every day. So I'm glad that that was helpful. And I find sometimes it's helpful for me too. It's hard sometimes to, even though it's ridiculous, it shouldn't be hard, but it's the way life is. So if you're not writing down your goals and things you want to achieve daily, do it once a week and write it down. Also talked about an exercise last week where you're going to look into the mirror and tell yourself that you love yourself. Look in the mirror and say, I love you. Look at yourself in the eye and do that. I had a number of people tell me they couldn't do it. So that's sad, but it's okay. So when I heard about that, I remembered a study that I had read a while ago that they did, I don't remember what kind of brain mapping they did. They did some kind of brain test of somebody who was playing golf. And they measured their brain waves while playing golf. And they found that when a person was lying in the lab visualizing playing golf, the brain looked exactly the same. So this is an amazing thing. When the person just thought about playing golf and went through it slowly, step by step in playing golf, the brain responded the same way as when they actually were playing. So I was thinking about that because, you know, it's really about changing the brain for many of these things. So I was thinking, okay, you can't stand in front of the mirror and tell yourself, I love you. Great. Just sit down, close your eyes, visualize yourself standing in front of the mirror. Visualize yourself where you're looking at your own eyes in the mirror and tell yourself, I love you, in your own head. You don't have to do it out loud. You don't have to do it in front of a mirror. Just imagine doing it. And we know that with visualization, the more specific you can be about it, the more detailed you can be about it, the better the results will be. So when you do some visualization, please be very, very specific and do that in as much detail as you can. That's how you get results with visualization. You can't just go blah, blah, blah. I think I'm going to think about this. No, you have to like sit there and think it through. And for a lot of you, that is a great thing to do with the intermittent fasting. So let's say you managed to have dinner and you didn't eat before bed. So now you've got maybe 3 hours in of it. You're going to sleep for, let's say, 7 hours. Now you've got 10 hours. Then picture yourself while you're lying in bed before you go to sleep. Imagine yourself getting up. And what are you going to do then? Maybe have a glass of water. Picture yourself having the water. Picture yourself getting showered, dressed, whatever you do in the morning. Picture yourself going to work or whatever it is you do. And picture yourself, you've seen the clock. It's now 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. So go slowly. You can go zip, zip, zip. It's not going to work. Visualize yourself going through step by step, filling in detail what you're going to do. Maybe even go to 1 o'clock, whatever it is for you. But imagine at 12 o'clock, okay, you sit down, calmly have something to eat. And maybe even do that visualization twice. I guarantee you, if you do it slowly and in detail, it will be that much easier for you to get through the morning and push your breakfast off until noontime. And the truth is, this will really work for anything that you want to do. To visualize yourself doing it, but again, detail is the key. People tell me, oh, I tried visualization, doesn't work. So I say, okay, how long did you take doing the visualization? 30 seconds, maybe a minute. Right, I agree with you, it doesn't work. That's not really visualization. That's imagination and hoping. Visualization is where you actually sit there, detailed, and do it. So I have somebody that I've been working with a lot, and her favorite thing when I talk to her about something like this, she says, I can't do it. So I get her to say, no, don't say I can't do it. Say I won't do it, because technically she can do it. So I say to her, please just tell me, say I won't do it. She goes, I can't. No, say I won't. I can't say I won't. Well, you just did. So when you're thinking about doing something, I want you to be very careful with your own personal power. Be very careful not to say I can't do something unless it's something that you physically can't do. I can't fly. I'm working on it, not yet. I can't fly. I can't do it. Not that I won't fly. I'm not talking about on a plane. I mean, flying. So if something you physically can't do, then you can't do it. But otherwise, the word is won't. And if you put that word into your vocabulary, it will increase your own power because you'll be telling yourself the truth. And who is a powerful person? What makes somebody powerful? A powerful person, really, bottom line, is somebody who does what they say they're going to do. So if you say you're going to do something, do it. If you're not going to do it, don't say you're going to do it. It undermines yourself. All right, you think, well, I'm just lying to this other person a little bit. I don't care about them. I care about you. When you say, okay, I'll be there later, and you have no intention of being there later, don't say it. And don't say I can't be there later. If you can really muster up the strength, say, I won't be there later. That's the truth. Okay, so the more you can, it's all about becoming more powerful. All these things that we talk about doing to becoming more healthy and to living a better life and to being a stronger person the way you are, it really starts with what you're telling yourself. And we've talked about in the past, telling yourself good things. And I know a lot of you still don't do it. And I understand why. It's an old habit, but just start telling yourself good things. Nobody is listening. Not yet. Maybe someday Google will be listening into your thoughts. But as far as I know, they're not doing it yet. So you're free to tell yourself, are you? Google, hello? Okay. So you're free to tell yourself whatever you want to tell yourself. Take advantage of it. Tell yourself great things. Picture yourself doing wonderful things. Picture yourself going in the right direction. Imagine yourself achieving the goals that you want. Whether it's a good relationship with a spouse, with your children, doing better at work, losing weight, whatever it is. If you picture yourself being successful, doesn't it make sense that your odds of being successful are going to be that much greater? And it's free. It's a matter of you getting yourself to become powerful. Own your own personal power. Watch what you say and think of yourself in that way so that you're going to be doing that. So I'm going to leave you with those ideas over the next couple of weeks. I will be joining you back right after Labor Day, and I hope you get an opportunity to listen in. I have some people told me to listen back to some of the old shows, and they really enjoyed it. They're all online. You can watch them on Facebook. They're online if you put in my name, Dr. Harry Schick, WCTC. All the podcasts are there. It's a wealth and ton of information I've been so happy to share with you over the last couple of months. So at this point, I just want to wish you a great couple of weeks. Take some good breaths, be the powerful person you are, and enjoy your life.